In South Korea, many experiments on animals are performed every year for various research and test purposes. Since we are dealing with precious lives, ethics should be put before everything else when it comes to animal testing. In order to conduct ethical animal testing, there are some procedures that must be taken in advance. This is to submit an animal test plan to the Animal Testing Ethics Committee beforehand and receive an approval. The details about writing a test plan and the process by which it is evaluated and approved are well explained in the online textbook called I Would Like to Know About Animal Testing Ethics Committee, which is made by the National Veterinary Research and Quarantine Service. So please refer to it. Now let's take a look at the things that one must know when using Three-Shine's MVCS rack, workstation, and disposal cleaner to perform scientific and ethical animal tests. Before performing an experiment on an animal, the experimenter must first prepare the animal testing facilities. First, in order to find out about the inside structure of an animal testing facility, we are going to look at the structure of the SPF animal testing facility as an example, because this type of facility is used most widely. An animal testing facility is divided into a total of 9 areas. An entry area, in which the animal is inspected and quarantined. An experiment area, in which the animal is experimented on. An entry storage area, in which various goods are carried into and stored. A managerial administrative area, which includes a changing room and restroom. An area in which cleaning, sterilizing, and disinfection is conducted. A waste disposal area, an area for machine maintenance, and other areas which include the corridors and stairs. In order to preserve the surrounding environment of the animal testing facility and create a hygienic atmosphere for both the experimenter and animal, it is recommended that animal testing facilities are divided into 9 areas to manage. Furthermore, each district must be managed strictly according to their individual needs. The most important thing for an animal testing facility is the environmental condition. Environmental conditions, such as temperature, humidity, and carbon dioxide, deeply affect the breeding of animals and the experiment results. And therefore, they must be applied appropriately to particular standards. Let us take a look at the environmental condition standards for animal testing facilities. For rodents such as mice and rats, it is most appropriate to have the temperature at 22 degrees Celsius with a 2-degree leeway below or above. For the humidity level, it is most appropriate to have it at 50% with a 5% leeway of above or below, and the brightness between 150 to 300 lux when measured at about 40 to 85 above ground in the center of the room. The noise should be kept lower than 40 to 50 phon. Wind speed between 10 to 25 centimeters per second. Ventilation 10 to 12 times per hour. Atmospheric pressure maintained at a level higher than the outside to prevent an inflow of outside air into the room, and especially maintained so that it is also higher than the corridors by 5 millimeters H2O. For the barrier area, when an animal is not occupying it, there must be less than 10,000 molecules of dust per feet squared that are between 0.5 to 5 micrometers in diameter. For falling bacteria, the 90 millimeter Petri dish with blood agar medium, after being cultured for 48 hours since being left open for 30 minutes, there must be less than 3 for the barrier area with no animal present, and less than 30 for the general area. For odor, the ammonia concentration should not exceed 20 ppm in the barrier area where the animals are bred. Three-Shine's MVCS rack satisfies the conditions for preventing cross-contamination as well as the conditions above. Managing and applying the environmental conditions of animal testing facilities appropriately is necessary in order to gain results that can be trusted. Also, it is the most basic factor of ethical animal testing. Only after such environmental conditions are prepared in the appropriate manner can the animals enter into the testing facility. However, the procedures to bring in the animal to the test facility is not easy either. These procedures are as demanding as managing the environmental conditions. What are they? We will learn about the procedures to bring in the animal using Threeshine's MVCS rack. When bringing the animal into the test facility, first the animal must undergo an inspection in the inspection room. As this part of the procedure needs to find animals that are in abnormal condition, it is of critical importance. And therefore, the inspection process needs to be cautious. During this process, sterilization equipments must be fully prepared. There are 2 points of view in the inspection of the animal, visual and tactile. The visual point of view is sorting out abnormal animals visually by checking their energy, appetite, nutrition, physique, pose, walking pace, breathing, change in the surface of the body, excretion, and so on. The tactile point of view is sorting out abnormal animals by touch, by checking their pulse, lymphatic gland, frame, teeth, tongue, inside of the mouth, heat sensitivity to touch, and so on. The animals that are found to be abnormal using these 2 methods are separated, cured, returned, or killed mercifully. Only the animals that do not have any abnormality are inspected in the quarantine room where Threeshine's MVCS rack is installed. The process takes about a week, and during that period, the experimenter has to identify whether the animal is abnormal as regards to its food intake, water intake, change in weight, appearance, behavior, etc., and must distinguish an abnormal animal for a second time through closer inspection. The animals have to go through a purification period for at least a week with quarantine. The purification period is a period for the animal to adapt to its environment and keep her. Usually the quarantine is replaced with the purification period. If any abnormality is found during the quarantine or purification period, microorganic monitoring needs to be performed immediately, and only animals without any disorders can be transferred to the animal testing area where it is raised and monitored. The quarantine room and keeping room must be sterilized. In particular, when an animal testing facility is newly built, the animals should be brought into the room only after the keeping room is sterilized with disinfection and formalin fumigation. Even after the animal is brought in, it must be sterilized using medication more than once a week. In this way, the treatment before conducting the actual animal test goes through a scientific and systematic process. Such rigor is necessary for a scientific and humanitarian animal testing. Now, what else must we know about in order to conduct an animal test? What needs to be remembered is that great care, based on accurate knowledge, must go into the animal test and the rearing of the animal. The first step of managing and rearing an animal begins as you enter the animal testing facility or rearing room. Just as the experimenter must wear sterilized clothes when entering the rearing room, because the rules decided at the facility must be obeyed. The reason why the entry rules must be obeyed is in order to prevent pollution coming in from the outside and prevent pollution caused inside the rearing room to escape outside. Also, the experimenters must check whether the temperature and humidity is right, whether there are any water leaks, whether the animal has not escaped, whether the MVCS rack is operating properly, and so on, and observe and record clinical signs of the animals. The second step of appropriately rearing and managing an animal is to keep the animals in a clean environment. In particular, cages, racks, and beds need to be replaced periodically. The cages for resting need to be replaced 1 to 2 times a week. The main part of the net cages need to be replaced once in 1 to 2 weeks, and the toilets, bucket, need to be replaced every day with sterilized ones. When moving the animals in order to replace a cage or mattress, identify the animal's gender and pregnancy by using Threeshine workstation and tweezers, and then move them to a newer cage. If the animals have babies, they should be moved carefully after identifying how many there are and what condition they are in. The third step of appropriate rearing is feeding, food and water. Feeding food and water always needs careful management that takes into account the type of animal, its weight, etc., so that the animal does not run out of food and water. Now, shall we look into the food and water intake of the main animals used for testing? Mice usually eat 3 to 5 grams of food and drink 5 to 7 milliliters of water a day. Rats eat 20 to 35 grams of food and drink 20 to 25 milliliters of water a day. Hamsters eat 10 grams of food and drink 10 to 15 milliliters of water a day. Rabbits eat 80 to 150 grams of food and drink 150 to 200 milliliters of water a day. Guinea pigs eat 20 to 30 grams of food and drink 80 to 120 milliliters of water a day. The fourth step to properly rearing an animal is periodic inspection. The exhaust air duct pre-filters regularly need to be replaced, and the MVCS rack needs to go through periodic inspection too. When checking the automatic rearing machine, all of its parts should be checked thoroughly, including automatic feeding and washing systems, timers, filters, pipes, nozzles, and so on. During the animal testing, the equipments used for rearing the animal should go through washing, drying, and sterilization using a pot disposal cleaner. And when going through inspection with sterilized food and water, the washer and sterilizer need to be inspected regularly. During the period of animal testing, the experimenter has to touch the animals several times for various purposes. Also, procedurally, anesthesia is necessary to perform surgeries. If the proper rearing of animals is a fundamental step for animal testing, proper restraint of the animal and appropriate anesthesia are the points that must be gone over for an ethical animal testing according to 3R rules. From now on, we are going to look into the proper methods of restraint and anesthesia and the objective standards regarding the experimental animal's pain. The experimenters must know about the right method of restraint, to not give anxiety and fear when holding the animal. With a mouse, there is one method to hold it by using one hand to hold the tail and the other hand to hold its back. There is also another method to use your finger to hold the tail and back at the same time. When holding a rabbit, one hand should hold the neck, while the other should hold up its hip. The surgery on experimental animals should be germless and without pain, and veterinary treatment should be followed before and after. Surgeons should be careful not to repeat surgeries. Painkillers and anesthesia should be used for ethical reasons. When anesthetizing an experimental animal, physical status, facilities, equipments, type of surgery, specialty of its kind, expenses, and time should be fully considered before deciding on the best anesthesia method. The anesthesia methods in animal testing are divided in two ways: injection and inhalation. The injection method is used and good when trying to dose an animal for a short time, and usually used in simple surgeries or to induce inhalation anesthesia. However, it is difficult to correct and adjust the level of anesthesia. On the other hand, adjusting the level of anesthesia is relatively easy for the inhalation method. Thus, it is used for experiments that requires long-time anesthesia or surgical operations. During anesthesia for a long period of time, the biological status of the animal must be monitored, and the secretion in mouth and airway should be removed periodically before the tubes are inserted into its organs and while the animal is still anesthetized. For mice and rats, the injection method is usually used, and sometimes cotton with ether or gauze or a tube is used to help anesthesia. What is most important when conducting an experiment on an animal is to minimize pain of the animal. The experiment